What happened with the UMWA at the, I call it the international level, but that just means it was headquartered in the US, but it had Canadian districts, so that made it the International Union. In the 1930s, the UMWA was quite left-wing. They were the key union that helped to create the new industrial union movement. It was called the CIO. And so we had the old union movement. In the States it was called the American Federation of Labor. In Canada it was called the Trades and Labor Congress. And they were mainly trades unions. So in other words, a union for pipe fitters and a union for carpenters, a union for electricians and so on. And the UMWA was a bit different because if you worked in a certain mine, you joined the UMWA. It didn't matter if you were a skilled miner or you just dragged the timbers into the mine, or you were driving the little dinkies out of the mine. You were all part of the UMWA. So the UMWA played the key role along with the Roosevelt administration in the States in getting the CIO off the ground, and was the key union. And John L. Lewis of the UMWA was the president of the CIO. And he figured out he was not a leftist, but he positioned the UMWA on the left side of the spectrum there, because that's the way you could build the union movement. And the crucial thing he did was he hired a bunch of communist activists to be organizers for the UMWA. So for that period in the 30s, the UMWA was very powerful and a leading light in the industrial union movement. Well, the same thing happened in Alberta. Starting in 1935, the communists decided that they had to rejoin the UMWA and build a united front, because they had in mind that the united front against fascism also had to happen in Canada, and you had to have a united union movement. And so they rejoined District 18, and the District 18 leadership, in consultation with John L. Lewis, said, okay, we can have a coalition with the communists. It doesn't make us communists, but we need them. And so what happened is they appointed senior communists to leadership positions in the UMWA in Western Canada. So the president of District 18 was a socialist, non-communist, who was closely aligned with John L. Lewis. And his name was Robert Levitt. And he was an old-timer, but to cement this marriage of convenience between the communists and the John L. Lewis people, they appointed a leading communist as the vice president. And they also were open to appointing communists or strong socialists to the district executive board. So we had this partnership between the socialistic and the non-socialistic people in District 18, and that was good for District 18 because all of a sudden, it took a while here in Coleman, but by the early 40s, the Coleman local rejoined the UMWA, which meant that all of the mine workers all across the Crowsnest Pass in Elk Valley were part of the UMWA. It was united, it was strong. The coal companies couldn't divide the workers because they had to deal with District 18. And there was this partnership, and Enoch Williams, who I mentioned before, was a communist, but he was a leader of the Blairmore local union and was also the representative of the Crowsnest Pass on the district executive board. So there was this leftist partnership with the John L. Lewis types, and they could live with it, but the leftists were not happy. They were not happy because they had lots of democracy at the local level and at the sub-district level, and even at the district executive board, they could sometimes vote down the John L. Lewis policies, but they could not get their people elected to run the district. And then as we got into the 50s, John L. Lewis started to say that the district should just negotiate contracts and not put it up for a vote to the membership. And of course the leftists in the Crowsnest Pass and the Elk Valley went crazy about that, because that was one of their first principles, is that the membership should have a say on whether to accept a contract or not. Because the labor, the bureaucrats who were negotiating the contract could sometimes get out of touch with what the membership wanted. And so the uneasy partnership between the left and the authoritarian UMWA leadership continued, but it became increasingly strained because as we got into the 50s, the UMWA became more and more authoritarian and more almost cult-like. When I look at some of their minutes from the union conventions in Cincinnati, I remember where their headquarters were before they moved to Washington, there was no opposition. It was like everybody was singing from the same hymn book. And it was totally unlike the democracy we saw in the Crowsnest Pass, where you go to a union meeting and you could see some people arguing one point, somebody else arguing the other side. They'd argue civilly, they'd try and convince the membership on which way to vote, and then they'd vote, and whatever came out, that's what the union local would do. And that just wasn't happening at the international level anymore.